Yeah, thank you. So we're going to explore how API works in real world application, the skills and the tools you need to become an API master, right? On our agenda today, we're going to be having two sessions. So the first session is going to be taken by my friend Denise, and she's going to be speaking on building APIs from scratch, right? You're going to learn how to build API from scratch. So she'll be using Python, Flask, and and Postman to test out the APIs. And the second session will be taken by myself. I'll be speaking on exploring Postman API workflow. So basically building out workflow to dynamically test out your APIs. Okay, great. So for today's workshop, what you'll be expecting is a mix of insightful presentations, interactive discussion, and hands-on exercises. So our goal from this workshop is for you to leave here with practical knowledge and skill that you can easily apply immediately. Okay. So for this to be a success, so we employed active participation. So I mean, this is key to making this workshop a successful one. And feel free to ask questions, share your experiences when needed, and engage with other participants. So, and again, this workshop is not just about learning, but also building connections. So we encourage you to network with peers and explore collaboration opportunities, if any. So I am going to be introducing our team. My name is Enoch. Um, my name is Enoch. I'm the workshop host. And with me, I have Denise. Denise is my friend. She's a DevOps engineer. She's currently the co-organizer of the Voyage 46 at Chingu. And she's also a coding coach at Codebar Community. And amazing. She's an amazing personality. I believe you get to meet her shortly. So while we are preparing to get started, and honestly, we are excited and we hope you're excited as we are. So to get started on the right foot, we kindly request that you check in by completing a quick Google form that is going to be dropped on the chat. Just complete the check-in form. This will help us to get to know you better and ensure that you have a great experience, right? Please take a moment. I think it's going to last for less than a minute to complete that Google form. And I mean, your participation is highly appreciated and it will make the event more engaging and personalized. So again, thank you for being a part of the API Mastery Workshop. And also thanks to Postman, our sponsor. Let's make this an informative and inspiring and enjoyable experience for all. So I believe we have quite a number to start. So without any further ado, let's get started. So join me as I welcome my friend Denise to take the first session. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nina, and thanks for the introduction. So yeah, about me, that's a really good introduction about me. So yes, I'm a DevOps engineer, also a coach. Also help co-organize the voyage at Chingu. Today I'll be talking about how to create RESTful APIs with Python and Flask. Not sure how familiar you are with Python and Flask. I'm just going to do something hopefully quite beginner friendly, so hopefully most people can follow along, but do feel free to ask questions along the way. I'm happy to get any questions and also walk you through everything that I'm sharing today. So yeah, let me just share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, I'll just go into the slideshow mode. Awesome. So yeah, so today we're talking about how to create RESTful APIs with Python and Flask. So I think before we kind of begin the talk about any code or anything, I want to go through some of the basics of how to actually create APIs and what APIs, REST and RESTful APIs are. So on this, just to try to cover the basics of what API is in case you don't already know. So it's an application programming interface. It's a software gateway that allows different software components to communicate with each other. So let's say you wanted to create a weather application, let's say, but you don't have that access to the online like weather data, the live data of like, let's say data, like you want to do UK data, let's say, like the weather on UK, then you can find an API that already has that information, and then you can create an app very easy just by accessing that data and bringing it back to your own application. So some common APIs around the world, like I said, like weather is quite a common one, like or financial data, like social data, like payment or location. And you can see from this like little diagram here, like you have like, you'll be like the user, the client, you'll make a request to the API, and then it'll go to the server and try and like find that information, go to the database and query it, and brings it back to API gateway, and then gives it back to response to you as a user. So that's how you would access applications like weather application or like kind of financial stock or that kind of information. Those kind of apps, that's how it's built off in the real world. And then talking a little bit about REST. So REST is essentially representational state transfer. Is a way of designing and organizing web services, so it like makes it really easy for computers to talk to each other on the internet. So just simplifies everything and shares and updates information pretty efficiently. So I can talk a little bit more about this on how it comes into play in a RESTful API. So now going on to what RESTful API is. So we now know that REST essentially lets computers talk to each other easily, right, over the internet. So REST API essentially is letting APIs basically talk to each other really, for you to talk to API pretty easily. So they use common protocols like HTTP methods. So that's like the language essentially that makes it easy for the API to read talks an API. So you have like get method, post method, patch, delete. So it's easy to manage the resources of the API, and that's why it's called RESTful API. And then you can see from this diagram again, like the client, like the user will make a request, and you can say, hey, I want to get some information. And then it'll go to like a certain URL, so that we also call this an endpoint. So like, let's say you go to surveys endpoint, and usually that would probably mean you're getting all of the information of all the surveys, and it contacts the server, and they'll be like, okay, I know what information you want. So it returns it into JSON format, and it sends it back to you, the client. So that's essentially what RESTful API is. And then moving on a little bit, so to talk about the HTTP methods again. So these are based on CRUD operations. If you're not familiar with CRUD operations, it's very common within the kind of world of technology and like programming. Like create, read, and update. What CRUD operations are, and then it relates back to all of these different HTTP methods that we talked about earlier. So create would be like a post method we would use an API. Get would be to read all of the data or read certain parts of data. Put or patch would be the way you can do to update some data in an API. Delete is just delete, so that's pretty easy. So yeah, without further ado, what we're going to be using to actually build and test an API today, we're going to be using Python and Flask to build the API, and using Postman to do some testing and see that it is working as you have kind of expected it to work from your code. So I guess it's time for a little demo on the code that I've written for Python and Flask. Let me see here. So going back to the top, is this big enough for everyone to see, or should I zoom in a bit more?
Yes, that's okay, Denise.
Okay, cool, awesome. So for this, py is a Python file essentially. I've called it api.py to write this Python file as it's like an API. What makes most sense. And then to do this, I had to import a JSON library, and also the Flask library. And for this library, you would need to install it. In this case, I've installed it, but I'll show you how you would normally install it as well to actually use this library. So you do pip install Flask. This will come back and it already says I already satisfied the requirement on my end. So yeah, if you wanted to use the Flask library when you use Python, then do pip install Flask. The JSON one is a default library, so you wouldn't need to do any installation to use it. And I've used these certain methods, which I'll talk about from the Flask library, JSON file and requests. And then we've built the app first. And this is like, if you go to documentation Flask, this is the default one you need to use to make an app in Flask. And then next, I've got a basic kind of employees data. So I've stored it into something called a list in the Python. It's also similarly called an array in like JavaScript or other like programming languages. And I've got dictionaries inside where you can do key value kind of information if you don't know already. So I've got, for here, it's very simple. I've just made an ID for every single employee and then a name, give them a name. So just to show for this demo, like a very easy kind of like data set. And then if I was to make a new employee, the next one would be I've saved it into a variable called next employee ID. So before, so I had some default data to start with, and if I was to add more employees, and this would be like the variable to start with, essentially. So here we have 3 methods that I've pre-made that I needed to use for this API. So I have a get employee method. These methods, these functions essentially, I would be reusing a lot within the API. So it's to kind of like define, if you don't know already in Python, then you would write predefined functions in a block, usually before you start the other parts of the code, so that you know it's there and it's easy to how I say it's it's like a global function, so you know it's like it's there and you can reuse it outside of other places. And it's best practice to write it at the top in Python because it's quite top-down language. And then this one for the get employee method, it's just to essentially return the employee information based on the ID you've given it, otherwise it will return none. So I'm not going to explain too much about this block of code, but again, like I'm happy to share a little bit more if you later if you want to. And then we have this other method called employee is valid. So it's checking if the employee is actually valid within the data, within the employees list that we've got. So if the user has that given name, then we're like, okay, then we can make or update that new employee. So we're checking if the person is giving this name value essentially before making or updating an employee. That's why we have this method for later. And then, okay, first, this route is the probably the easiest one to understand. And for this one, if you were to make any kind of routes in Flask, essentially you need this syntax called @app.route. And then you have brackets or parentheses after. And then here, then the first part of the parentheses, you need to put in the kind of endpoint or the URL you want it to go to. So for this one, just for simple sake, I guess, to understand what we're doing, it's just the slash employees one. So we're like, okay, so like it's easy to comprehend, like slash employees, like we're just gonna get the employees. You can define a method you want to do so for me. This time we want to use the get method where we're going to read all of the data. And that's how you could do it essentially to make any kind of routes in Flask. And then you would need to write a method that you're kind of defining that you are writing into this route. So this is not a global function like we did earlier. It's just exactly like, okay, when you go to this route, use this function. So this function just only lives in this route essentially. So I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna call it get employees. So that makes sense. So what we're trying to do is get employees. So here we got the JSON file method from the Flask library. So JSON file essentially turns it into a JSON format of the employees list that we already had above. So it would turn this essentially here into a kind of JSON format that's more reader friendly, like it's appropriate for API essentially. So that would answer that one. And I guess I could maybe just do a quick demo of how that works as well before we go into any other routes. So Postman is like a really good software application for testing APIs, especially if you make it locally or any kind of online APIs that you want to test. So here I have already, I don't think I have actually, wait a minute. So this is the thing with live demos. So I'm gonna first run the file, this Python file that I've got, api.py, and to run any Python files on your local machine, you need to first make sure you're in the right folder where your Python file is. So I can also check by using this command called ls, if you're not familiar already, where you can check all the list of files you have within that folder. So I've got, okay, I have the app.py file here, so I'm in the right directory to run this file. So then I can just do Python. So this is the same, we're going to run a Python file, and then do api.ui. And there you can see it's running the Flask app, the API, and then it will tell me where it's running on. So it's running on HTTP, the 5000 port. So by default, most Python apps run on the 5000 port, especially for Flask by default. And I've also, just to quickly go in the code, you can see I've also defined it to run on the port 5000 here. This is the source of code where you can define how to read from the app on Flask. So I'll go on Postman again. Although I've done it, I'm going to do this from scratch, just to show everyone. So I've pasted the local host link, the 5000 port that I just got, and then I'll go to the /employees endpoint, and I'll use a get method. So you can define the method you want here. I'm going to say I want to get, and then I'll send the request. And then when you send the request, you can see it in a kind of JSON format, and you can also check in the headers as well, like it's saying the content type is application.json. So it is very helpful to also use the headers to check the type, the format type you're getting back. So I'll go back to the code that we were on to talk about some of the other methods I've also got in this API. Okay, so here's another one that I've made. This is just to get, I can also, to kind of, it's similar to the last method to get all the employees, but this time I'm just going to get one of the employees' information. And to do that, I'm just going to specify I want an integer this time. I'm calling it an ID variable. And the method again here, I'm just going to say get, so it's reading the data essentially. And I have to find out we need this, we're looking for this input ID and has the integer type. And then, oh, sorry about that. Then this here, we're going to grab the right employee based on the ID, which I have that method from before, from above. So we're going to save it here. But if it is equal to none, essentially, if the employee returns none, then we'll be like, okay, there's an error, this employee doesn't exist, and it will give a status code of 404. So 404 is a common status code where it's if something's not found, it gives a 404 error. You can read a lot more about status code as well. You do some Google search. But yeah, just to cover that off. And then if not, then it'll just return like the employee in a JSON format. I won't demo this method right now. We can probably show it later, but hopefully that's easy enough to understand what's going on here. And if you wanted to make a post method, it'll be a bit different. So this will be probably a bit more interesting covering now. So here we're using the /employees again. So it's similar to the one above where we did the /employees route, exactly the same. The endpoint, and here I'm defining the post method. You could write a couple methods here. You could do it, you could like, for example, like do this. You could write a couple more methods here, and then you only will need to define like when it's get, then you do this, or post, you do this. Personally, I don't really recommend doing this. I think it's a lot harder to edit your code, a bit harder to kind of debug as well if something was to go wrong. So I would definitely recommend just separating the methods and write it in a different block rather than doing that. But just to show you, you could do that, but I would recommend, especially if you're a beginner, to separate the blocks out. So that's what I've done here. So you know that this is for the post request. So here I'm saying the method create employee, I'm defining on this route. And I'm grabbing the variable that I made earlier, the next employee ID, which I've talked about a bit earlier here. So we know it's equal to 4 because in our structure, it's only up to 3 at the moment. So going back to this code, and then here, I'm using the JSON library so that it will get the request. Actually, going back, maybe reading this line backwards a little bit. So request.data essentially is getting the data that users sending through. For post request, it will be through the body. So you'll get it back and then turn it into an object that can be the Python object essentially that's a dictionary with this JSON.loads, and then it'll save it into a variable called employee, and that's how it's getting back that data that the person's trying to make, that employee that they're trying to create. And then this is to validate if the employee is actually valid, if they've given the right properties. So earlier I've showed the method that I've made predefined that you need the name value in the body parameters essentially, which I can show you in a minute and demo it. So why when this would not work. So this would return it in a JSON format and say, hey, this is not valid, and give you a 400 error code and say like, oh, this is a bad kind of request. And then if not, if it's a valid if it's a valid format, has a name value, then it would, you know, put that next employee ID into the employee ID property, the ID in the dictionary, and then it will add it by one. So the next employee ID will be the next one. So it will keep incrementing up to one. And then it'll add this new employee to the employees list, essentially. And then it will return a message of saying a new employee has been added with this name and this ID, and give a 201 status code. So 201 is commonly used for when you're creating or updating something into an API. Just to cover this off as well, and now I'll show you how this method works and when it wouldn't work. I'll just save this file for now. I didn't really make any changes, and I'll demo this on Postman. So this time we're going to make a post request to make a employee, and I will do it. So I have redefined it so you would use the rule tab to make your JSON format to make an employee. So I've got the name value here, and I'm just going to call this employee Judith for the name, and send the post request. So you can see the data type is a JSON, which is good. And then we go back to the body tab. You can see we've got the message that a new employee with name Judith and ID 4 has been created. And we can check this by making like a GET request that it has been made, and I'll put none here. So you can see Judith has been added to our list of employees here, and now make a request that won't work in the post request, like when it would not be valid. So I can show you that this is also a good way of testing to show that that error message would come up. So if I do this and I say I'm not going to call it name, I'm going to try and pass in a value that's let's call it ID, for example. I'm going to pass an ID. Obviously, it shouldn't work. So if I send this request, let's see what happens. And you can see the error message just come up, the invalid employee properties. So because they haven't received the name property. So you can see that that method works. So this is why a good way of using Postman to test your kind of methods as well. And then going back to the code, I've got a couple more methods here that I'll go through as well. So if you want to do a request to update the data, you can use patch in the method, and this is quite similar to old, so I won't explain too much. Again, we're using integer, looking for the variable name ID. Again, here we're checking if we try to get the employee to, if it doesn't exist, then we return the error message. And here to update, similarly to the one above, we're doing JSON loads again, so we are turning into a Python object. Based on the body parameters that we're passing, the user's passing, and it will save it into the updated employee variable. And if that person's not valid again, it will the property does not exist again, so the name property hasn't come back. Give a 400 status code again. Otherwise, it will update the employee with just that updated dictionary here that we've retrieved, and then return the new employee essentially. Not the updated employee, the information to the user. So we could try this method now, see how it works. So this time we're doing a patch request. So and then you would need to define the employee you want to update. So let's say we want to update Judith that we just made earlier. I'm going to put a name here. Let's say Judith changed her name to Judy. So let's put this request through and see what works. So yeah, then we can see that it's returned the fact that has been updated. The employee with ID 4 has been updated, and it's now Judy. And we can also double check this with a GET request that we have with the number 4. So we're just getting employee with the ID 4. So we can see if it's been updated. Again, you can see it's been updated. So it's quite good for testing again, like Postman always is. And we can also do one more here just to check that the error message comes up. So if I go to the body parameter rule, and let's say I'm not passing in a name, like I'm going to passing, let's say I'm passing in this time the surname. So I'm going to try and pass surname for the employee ID 4. I'm going to say it's Judy again, this Judy, but again, now it's going to say invalid employee properties because in this method, we've said that you need to pass in the name value in this raw format in order for it to work. So yeah, this is very good sign that the code is working as we expect it to. And lastly, I'm going to cover the delete method. So the delete method, again, quite similar. We're asking for an integer again, and it has to be we're going to call it ID. The method is to delete this time. So we're going to try and delete some data, and it's calling for the employee's variable that we've defined above, where it stores all of the employee's information. And then here we are getting the ID of the employee that we're trying to delete. But if it's none again, then it'll be like this employee doesn't exist. Give you a 404 error, it's not found. And then here we're using list comprehension. If you're not familiar, it's a very Python specific method, so I won't explain too much about it. But essentially it's going through all of the employees and checking if the ID is equal to that ID that we want to delete. If not, then it'll save it back into employees list. So then the one that we don't want to save won't be saved. So it will be deleted, and then return the employee and say that it's basically been deleted with the 200 save codes that it has been successful, this request. And that is about it. And I will quickly demo this method. So we'll delete Judy now from our list of employees. So if I do delete, I won't pass in anything. We know her ID number is full, so just delete her off the list. So it'd be like, okay, turns her information, and then we can check if it's been deleted with a get request. So we do this. Yeah. So yeah, you can see now Judy has been officially deleted from our employees list. I think that's about everything in terms of the code. What I want to cover, again, I guess we could check the error message if we try to delete another employee, the 404 one. Let's do that quickly. So it's really good to make sure like all of your methods are working as expected, that you're getting like even the error messages as well. So let's say I'm going to try and delete Joe this time with the ID 3. Then I'll pass in 3 here, and I'll send. And Joe has been deleted. We can check that again. Oh, sorry, I've still processed the one with the error, but I'll check that Joe's been deleted. Okay, so this time, like, we know Joe's been deleted, and like, let's try and delete Joe again, although we know he's been deleted. So if I do delete, free, this shouldn't delete anybody. Again, I would say employee does not exist. And let's say it returns a 404 error not found. I think, yeah, that's about it. That's everything I have to share in terms of the demo, and I'll quickly go back to the slides. So just to wrap up, like some of the advantages of kind of testing a Postman, hopefully you just saw in a live demo as well. It's like really easy for kind of like data manipulation, just when they kind of request, you can use the like parameters there, like the body parameters. There are other parameters as well you can use that I didn't show today, but you could pass like query parameters there as well. And other like headers, even like you need to pass some headers. So it's very useful in terms of that, like in terms of passing variables and all that. And testing it makes life a lot easier than testing on a browser. Also, it's really good at response validation, so you can validate whether or not the API responses are working as you expected. As we saw in the demo, like, is it returning the right status code? Is it returning the kind of message that you want it to return based on the methods you have made? So yeah, hopefully that covers everything for today. Let me know if you've got any other questions, and I will stop sharing my screen for the time being.
Thank you so much, Denise. That was really an insightful section. Please, guys, if you have any questions, this is the right time to ask. So Denise is ready to take our questions now. So you can type the questions, or you can just unmute and ask the questions directly. Okay, so while that is going on, Denise, I would like to know what would be your recommendation. So I want to start up Python, would you recommend that I learn? Because I don't know how the Flask and the Python incorporate. I know Flask is a framework, right? Would you advise that I should start with Python or I should go with Flask altogether? Because I know Flask is a framework and then Python is the language.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Enoch. So I think if you're a very beginner to like programming or Python itself, I would recommend going with learning Python first and not adding the Flask element. It might complicate it a bit more than necessary. I think it's good to get your head around like lists and dictionary or kind of the different data structures first, get used to the basics of Python and doing like loops and things. But if you have learned other languages before, let's say you're very comfortable with JavaScript, I think you could try and do both at the same time. But that's just, I think it's based on kind of like what you're more comfortable with, what your experience currently is. But I think Flask and Python have some very good documentations online. So if you were a more experienced like developer, programmer, definitely I think you could pick them up I think you can easily pick them up if you wanted to. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. We have a question on the chat. I will just read. It said, which one is good, Django or Flask?
Um,
Django.
Yes, I've heard of Django. I haven't actually used it myself, funny enough. But I do know from like conversations with a lot of different people within the community that Flask is a lot easier to pick up as a beginner. So I think this is why most people are more familiar with Flask in the first place, especially you just started programming in Python. I heard some really good things about Django as well. I think in a real world setting, most people don't use Flask in a professional environment when you actually work for companies. So that is like, I always say like if you have kind of master Flask, let's say you're very confident with Flask, I think then you can pick up Django. But if you're more the beginner, I would say like try Flask first. Make sure you kind of feel comfortable with that before trying out Django because it's a lot more complicated from what I heard. It's a little bit hard to get your head around. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So to Samuel that asked question, Samuel is asking if this session will be available. I wish to learn it. Yes, Samuel, this session is currently recorded. I will make it available to every participant. Thank you so much, Denise. This is all the questions we have right now, I guess. Okay, yeah, I have one more, sorry. As a front-end developer, do you need to learn Postman?
Um, Probably not. I don't know. I've never seen, well, at least I've never seen a use case really for front end in terms of using Postman. So I would say no, unless I'm wrong. But yeah, I wouldn't, haven't seen you using it for front end, no, as a developer. It's very unlikely you would.
Okay, thank you so much for that. This is probably unrelated, but I would love to ask. Someone is saying, can you quickly list few of the courses or program I need to become a DevOps engineer?
Good question. Yeah, like I think it depends. Like there are some very good boot camps out there. Like I've done the Makers boot camp and the DevOps course is like really good. I've also had some very good Udemy courses on DevOps. Also there's some very good like I think people on YouTube as well that can like give you some of the basics. But I would say like maybe look at Udemy or like other kind of learning platforms for that kind of resource as well. I can't personally recommend any, like because I haven't tried anything online myself, but I know that I got really lucky with the bootcamp I was on. At Makers, they had a very good course there and some very good materials. But yeah, I think also there's lots of resources out there. Look for it.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, you can keep the question coming. After the session, I'm going to share the contacts to Denise you can reach her on. So if you have any more questions, you can please shoot it up to her. Thank you so much, Denise, for having the session. So we are going to quickly move up to the next session. We promise this is not going to crash your weekend. We are going to spend just 1 hour, and after 1 hour, we are through. So we're quickly going to move to the next session. Just before that, I want to really appreciate your joining once again. And also, please, there's a Google form on the chat, just in case you have not done yet. Please, we'll admonish that you please do a check-in form there so we can also reach you when we need to reach you and make this workshop an amazing session. Okay, so great. I'm going to share my screen now and start up the next session. Please let me know when you can see my screen. Thank you. Okay.
No, we can see your screen up.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I think I need to turn off this. Just a minute. I'm sort of struggling with this. All right. So I'm going to be taking on the Exploring Postman API workflow. And quickly, we're just going to get in. The agenda for today is we're going to be looking at an overview of Postman and also building an API workflow using Postman. So this is a little about me, my education, my past experience, and my current position. And also, I'm sort of volunteering at different platforms on Vite, Coding, CodeBar, and Coding Coach. Yeah, so we're just going to drop right in. So what is Postman? Postman is like Denise has said, is a widely used tool that plays a crucial role in API testing and development. It sort of basically simplifies the process of working with APIs and ensures the function as expected, just like the tests that we've done using the APIs that Denise created. Okay, these are some of the roles and features of Postman. So for API testing and validation, request creation, customization, just like what Denise has demonstrated. So she was able to create requests for employees to get all the employees, to create new employees, delete employees, and basically up the CRUD operation. So automation and testing is also there, collection organization. So Postman gives you the privilege to sort of orchestrate your requests in an organized format called collections. We're going to get into that shortly. Environment variables, so you can set global and scope environment variables, data-driven testing, documentation, collaboration. Postman is a very good tool for documentation, request documentation, basically. Collaboration, you can collaborate with um, other team members using Postman. You can do that using GitHub. Currently, they have an integration with GitHub where you can version your collections, your requests and everything. You can also collaborate with other team members using Postman. So Postman is also good for monitoring and performance testing. And also, my favorite part is the mock server. So for the mock servers, Postman gives you a feature where you don't necessarily need to set up a server to be able to do your test, right? You can easily spin up a serverless infrastructure that you can use to run some tests quickly with just a few buttons click. I think maybe for our other session, we'll talk on that, basically. Yeah, so I'm just going to get into building an API workflow. So what is an API workflow? An API workflow is also known as API workflow process, refers to the series of steps. So there are series of steps and interaction involved in working with APIs. So an API workflow essentially is defines how you create, manage, and utilize API within a specific context, such as maybe web development, like Denise has demonstrated, mobile app development, or even system integration. So some component of an API workflow includes API request creation. So before you can build up a workflow, you need to first of all create the request, the API request. Then you have data exchange, you have authentication and authorization for requests that necessarily require that. We have request handling, response validation, error handling, iteration and optimization, documentation, monitoring and testing, and etc. So we have, these are just a few components of the API workflow. So for today, we are going to be sort of exploring this concept using Postman. We're going to be learning how to set variables, what variables are, and how to set, update, and use variables. So we are going to learn how to write scripts on Postman. So scripts, basically JavaScript on Postman. Then we're going to learn how to write tests, write some tests and do some assertion. Then we're also going to learn how to build a request workflow. Then finally, we are going to learn how to run a collection. So yeah, that's it. Let's get to work quickly. Apologies if I'm rushing this session through. I just don't want to take more than the expected time. So forgive me for that. So I'm going to quickly switch to my Postman. All right. So quickly, what I have done here. Please confirm if you can see my Postman. Can you, Denise?
Yeah, all good.
Can you see my Postman application?
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's slide
yeah, we
still.
can see.
Yeah.
Okay, please. Let me just share that. Guessing. You know what? I'll just share my entire desktop. Okay. All right. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can see
perfect.
clearly now. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Okay. We move this away from here. Okay. All right. Okay, so what I've done here, I've created a collection. So collection is just a way of grouping your API request in an organized format. So what I've done is I've gone ahead to create a collection called API Mastery Workshop, October 2023. So inside of that collection, I have a folder. So the folder is called API Workflows. So today, for the API workflows, we'll be leveraging, so I've sort of taken some time out to write out documentation, and just in case, because I'm going to share this, in case you want to try it out yourself, I've taken my time to write out documentation on how to play around the APIs, the workflow that we are going to build today. So this is the documentation. You can go through it at your leisure time. So today we are going to be using the Star Wars APIs for this exercise. So I've taken the leverage to create two requests. One is the get star shapes and the other one is the echo star shapes. So the get star shape is actually where we are going to be building the API workflow, basically. So this endpoint is just similar to what Denise has created, but however, this is a different API that have been created, and it's an open source. You can just grab this URL and go check it out after the session. So basically, if I send this request, okay, I think my reception is a bit. Guys, confirm you can still hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you now.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can hear you very well.
Thank you so much. Okay, for some reason, yeah, finally. For some reasons that took a while. Okay, but again, yeah, this is the response for that request. So basically what is on the response is just some properties similar to what Denise has given insights to. So for Denise, we have the ID and name as properties, right? So this is the JSON object that was returned from this API. We have the count, we have next, we have previous, and then we have result. So basically, this is a paginated response. So what it means is that the numbers of Starship that are being returned are paginated, so they are chunked into different pages so that you can easily optimize that API and get quicker response in case of maybe you have quite large information. That is why we're using paginated data. So this is what we are going to be using today. So currently we have the count, which tells us the total number of starships on this API. And then we have results as well, which contains an object of each starship. So on the object, we have the name, model, manufacturer, and etc., all the other information about a particular starship. So we have them in object. So what we are going to do, we are going to head over to our test tab. So on this test tab, what we want to do, we want to be able to access this information and then manipulate it to sort of build up a robust workflow. So again, this is just a chunk of the starship that has been returned on the result object property. So we have a total number of 36, but on this result, we have total number of 10. We're going to check that out quickly. So on our test tab, what we can do is to start writing up a script that we can use to access this information and then manipulate based on our workflow. So currently what I've done is I've written some script, but I just commented them out so that I can take time out to explain what each line is doing. So on the very first line, what I'm doing is I'm creating a local variable called response, and I am storing the value to be this response basically. So the way you can access this response on Postman is to get the object. So by saying Postman PM for Postman, and accessing the response object. So this is the response object. Anything that has been returned from the any API, you can access it with postman.response. But right now, I'm trying to convert it to JSONify it to get the JSON format of this response that is returned. Okay, because there are several formats. So you get the XML format, HTML format, text format, and this auto format will just automatically, based on this header that was displayed, to automatically select the format for you if it's an auto, but right now I'm just specifying that I want the JSON format of this response. So we are going to quickly test that out. So I'm going to save, just a minute, I'm going to save this and test that out to ensure that actually I'm getting this response. So if I send this request again, sorry, forgive me. If I send these requests again, yeah, so I'll go to just below my Postman application, it has a console. If I click on the console, because what I've done here is to say, get the response and then log this response to the console. So if I go down to the console here, I've opened it up, right? Let me expand this. So on this workflow, on this console, what I've done is that I'm able to access the count, just the same response I get here. I'm able to access the count, the next property, the previous property, and then the result. On the result, I have like 10 records on the result, which is a good thing. So great. We have that first step done. So now that we have access to the response information, I'm just going to comment that out. I don't need that. So I'm just going to show us how to quickly write some tests. Yeah. Please, I'm just going to rush the session because I don't want to exceed our time. So this is basically, I'm just going to comment this. This is basically saying that I want to test this, that the status code is 200. So I'm testing basically that to see that this API returns 200 status as the status code. So I'm asserting that the response should be status of 200. Basically, that's my first test. The second test I'm doing, you can stack as many tests as possible depending on your requirement. So next test I'm doing is that I'm testing that the response object contains results. So I want to ensure that this result is returned on the response. So what I'm doing is I'm asserting, so I'm saying, Postman, I expect the response, which is this response variable that I've stored here. I expect the response to have a property called result. So this property here, I expect it to be on the result, on the response, right? And secondly, I'm saying that I also want to assert that this result property should be an array. Okay, so I know that I'm expecting that this result should be an array of objects. So basically, I'm saying this should be an array. So this is basically how to write tests, as simple as this, how to write tests on Postman. So I'm just going to save this and then run this, call this, send a request to this API again. Okay, quickly. So I have been able to run the two tests, and we can check this out on this test result. So on the test result, we can see correctly that we were able to run two tests, and the two tests passed. So the first test was status code is 200, which is the first test that we've written here. Let me just expand this. And the second test is the response object should contain results. So we are saying the response object contained result. So we can just do a negative test quickly. I'll test for 200 again, but I will say response property contains what is not there. Let me just say contains name. I know response does not contain name. Okay, so I'm just going to save that and quickly run. Okay. Great. So we are going to see the test. You see that we have two tests run, but one was successful, one passed, and the other one failed, right? So we're saying here that it expected this count, it expected a name, but there was no name there on the response. That's basically what it's saying. So I'm just going to revert this so that we can have the correct. Okay, great. We've seen how to write test. So next is we want to play around with the variables. So I'm going to uncomment this out. I'll show this. So what I'm doing here, I'm essentially saying that, you know what, I have some variables that I've stored. Let me just quickly go down and show you. So on my collection, if you want to create variables, right, you just need to go to the collection, right, and then go to variables. These are some of the variables that I've created. So I've created a page number, and I'll tell you why this is important. I've created a page number, right, and initialized it to 1. I've also created fastest speed and fastest ship. So what I'm trying to do here is that I want to dynamically be able to store and access this variable. That's why I'm creating it. So I'm going to go return back to my star shape because I'm still on this test tab. So what I'm doing here is to say I'm trying to access my page number. So to do that, you just need to go to Postman collection variables, because again, it's a collection variables, it's not a global variable. So it's a collection variable that is on this particular scope. And then I want to get the variable name page number. So I have page number created already. Great. So that's what is happening here. So on this block of code, what I'm doing, I'm checking this condition to see if it meets this condition. So I'm checking if there is another page to be loaded. If you check the response, right, you can see clearly that it's saying that there is another page. So it means that we have more record to fetch from the Star Wars APIs, okay? So I'm checking that if there is another page, so it means that if this property, response.next, this property here is not null, it means that there's another page. So what I'm doing is that I'm automatically updating this page number. I'm saying PM collection variables, then set. So set is the way to update a variable. I'm updating this page number to be the current page number plus 1. So essentially, if the page number is 1, I'm updating it to 2, right? And then we're going to get to this line in a minute. So I'm just going to skip this. But I'm saying that, you know what, if we don't have any other, if this nest is null, right? Essentially, what I'm saying is that if there's no other page to be loaded, so what you need to do, just reset it back to 1. So it's going to automatically update the page number variable to 1. So I'm just going to save this and quickly test this out. So now I need to apply my page. So I'm just going to check this box. So if I check this box, what to do, it will add a query parameter as page and then the page number. Currently, the page number you can see is 1 and the scope is collection. So I'm just going to save this and quickly call this endpoint. Great. So we've been able to, and our tests passed, or the test result passed, and we're able to get the response. But guess what happened? If you go on this page, you see that this page has updated to 2. We can confirm that here. You can see that this page updated to 2. So based on our script, we've been able to tell Postman to, you know what, if there's another page just simply update this page to 2. And guess what? With that being said, I don't need to do any other thing. I can easily send this request again, and I will get to the next page by doing this. Great. You see now we are on the second page, and this is a list of the star shapes on the second page, right? So, and we have next, we still have another page to go. And if you check here, you see that here has been updated to 3. So we have the page number updated to 3. We can easily confirm that here it's now updated to 3. And then we can send a request again. Great. So we see that we fetched the third page of the star shape, and we see that our page number is updating correctly. We're happy with that. So it's updated to 4. I'll just quickly call the endpoint. Great. So now we have this nest set to null. So it means that our condition is no longer true. So it's now going to reset the page number to 1. Okay. So, and that's what we can see here. So based on what the script that we've written, we've said when we don't have any other page to go, then just reset it to 1 so that we can easily run this request again. So is anyone asking any question? Okay, so great. So that works fine, and that's great. So quickly, the next I will just do is to quickly do this. I just want to manipulate this information a bit to get to get the fastest speed. So the ship with the fastest speed and the name of the fastest ship. So I'm just going to manipulate the data. This is just something I'm just playing around with. So just to show you how robust you can go with building a workflow like this. So what I've done is that now I'm getting the results. So this is just regular JavaScript. I'm just saying, get the results from the response and then loop through the results. For each of the star shape, what I need you to do, get me the variable called fastest speed. On the variable, what I am doing, I'm comparing to see if there is a faster ship over the current stored variable, right? So I'm checking if the maximum atmospheric speed is greater than the current stored speed, right? So if I find any ship like that, what I'm going to do, we've already seen this method before. I'm going to update the variable fast speed to the current fastest ship. And then also I'm going to pick the name of the fastest ship. I'm going to update it. So this is basically what I am doing. So we are just going to quickly test this out. So if I go here and we have our page number as 1. So if I quickly call this method. Great. So if we go to this variable, we see that this is updated right now. So it's updated to, this is the fastest shape from the page 1. So it has updated to 1,200. So this is the speed. And then this is the name of the speed. We can quickly confirm that from the response by checking out this maximum atmospheric speed. So we can check this is 950. This is 975. This is 1,000. So 1,000 is the highest now. This is not available. This is 1,050. This is 1,000. This is 1,050. And this is 1,200. So this is the highest actually, and this is the name, Thai Advanced X1. So, and that is exactly what has happened here. So without further wasting our time, I know time is fast spent. I'm just going to quickly show how, you can reach me if you need to get more details about this. And this script is going to be available to everyone. I'm just going to show how we can quickly run this on a Postman collection level, on a runner. So this is where this comes in. Because I am dynamically going over the pages, right? I'm dynamically going over the pages with this condition. Because of that, I want to tell Postman, you know what? Until you get to the last page where we don't have any more Starship records, I want you to set the next request to be this same request so that I can call this recursively until there is no more page to be called before I can go to the next request. That is what I'm saying there. So I'm saying that as against running from top to bottom, so it will run this request when I'm running it on the runner. It will run this request and immediately go to the next request. But I'm saying no, don't do that. What you need to do, I want to manually set what my next what the next request should be on the pipeline. So the next request would be the same request with the dynamically updated page number, right? And until that one is completed, don't go to the next request. That's what I'm saying here. So to run this workflow, I'm just this completely. To run this workflow on, I think someone. Okay, I think someone needs to mute though. So okay, so to quickly run this. Oh, I think someone needs to mute.
Yeah, meeting.
Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry about that. So to quickly run this on a runner, so if you want to run this on a collection, you need to go to your collection, and on your collection dashboard, you'll be able to see this run, right? If you click on the run, it's going to show all the requests that's currently orchestrated, organized under that collection, basically. So these are the two requests that I have. Again, on this second request, basically it's just a Postman echo request, just like you are printing something to the screen. So whatever you post to it is going to return the same thing to you. So it's going to return it exactly the way it is. So it's not manipulating any data. Whatever you send to it is going to send back to you. So it's just a dummy post request. So what I'm doing here is to say when I finally get the IS star shape, I want to echo it out on the request. So that's what I'm basically doing on the second request. So on the runner, what we want to do is to say, I want to run all the requests. I will just persist the responses for this particular session. And then I can choose whatever iteration I want to do. I want to run it. Iteration means the number of time to run it. I want to just run it once so that we can see how this works. And I don't want any delay between them. So what I will do, I'll just go ahead and run it. Great. So we can see that the first request that, it has completed now. The first request that I ran was for page two. Page two because variable here started from, we've already ran the request once, so started from page two. So we can see the results here. So it ran the first one for page two. As against going to the next request, it ran this one again for page three, ran it for page four, and then before it moves to the next request. So we can check out the responses here, right? These are the response from each of the pages. And this as well. And then finally, this request. So you see it has sent back the fastest shape. The name of the fastest shape is H-type Ubian yacht. And then we have this fastest speed to be 8,000. So this is basically how you run a Postman collection. But again, I'm just going to try this one more time by going back. You go to the Postman collection, you click on run. Now you've already set up your workflow, how you want it to go. You click on run and then you set the iteration you want to do. You can even use this for performance as well. You set the iteration that you want to run and then you click on run app mastery. So this is the collection, run app mastery workshop, October 23. So yeah, it ran for page one. Automatically starts running from page two. Automatically updates page three, page four, and then finally the output. So great. Basically, this is how you can build up an API workflow and then write script, also test out, write test scripts as well, then also manipulate data, depending on your needs, right? Manipulate data and then set variables basically. So at this point, I would like to pause and ask any question. If there are any question, I can take them. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I quite understand that we are 10 minutes over time. I sincerely do apologize for that, but quickly, I would just want to say I want to thank you guys for joining this session. And thanks to our guest, Denise. Denise, thank you for accepting to come online, to come and give us the talk. I'm really very grateful. And also for all the participants, I am grateful for joining. If you have any question, please feel free to, you have our contact, feel free to shoot us any message and we'll be glad to take them. Really, I don't want us to spend more than this time that we've done. Yeah. So I would like to say, I want to call it a day. Yeah, please, I would just want to beg that if you haven't filled out the check-in form, please ensure you do so. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Hello.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, Enoch. Yeah.
Hi, Kasim, I can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, would the clip be available? The video clip, the recording?
Yes. So I had mentioned that it is recorded and I would send a notification when the video is available. But yes, it's going to be available.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining and do enjoy the rest of your day.